182 days have passed since Reading's last home win when the final whistle rang on Saturday's 3-0 beating of Hull, but at last, Sweet Caroline rang around the Mailbag Stadium without any bitter feeling. After a destitute midweek performance against Norwich, the Royals bounced back and are actually now 2 from 3. Inconsistency has its benefits. Welcome to episode 169 of the Tilehurst podcast. I am your host, Marc Mayo. Joining me this week are Simeon Pickup, aka BucksRoyal, the tilehurstend.com editor, and Paula Martin, experts in all things Reading FC Women's, and Star as well. So, just a quick note, there was a bit of a technical issue, shall we say, for the intro, so we're going to crack straight onto the recap and talk all things Reading FC versus Hull and Norwich.
The Tilehurst End podcast by Reading fans for Reading fans.
Reading 3, Hull 0 then, and let's compare and contrast this Norwich game a little bit, Sim. I do think that the first thing I want to talk about the Norwich game is that Tim Della became a bit of a Norwich icon overnight with his iFollow commentary that was obviously BBC Berkshire but also iFollow as well, and it was if you haven't heard it yet, it was just basically as the Norwich second goal goes in, it's just no, and it really is. I mean, I was listening to it in the car on the way home, and it just, sometimes you can only laugh even when it is your own team getting beaten, and it did kind of feel very typical at the time. But in terms of comparing the Norwich games to the whole game, statistically Reading lost the possession battle in both. Reading had 13 and 14 shots and conceded 11 and 9, so very similar in that. Not a huge difference statistically. So, I mean, what do you think about the week that we've had? It's been a bit of a strange one.
Yeah, it was a really odd week for us, to be honest. Having such a down and up week, I guess, a really disappointing performance against Norwich, and then completely opposite display against Hull. I was really hoping that we were going to put in a really gutsy, encouraging performance against Norwich, coming off the back of that win at Preston, first one in the league for us this season. But just to concede so quickly after finally getting that equaliser was really frustrating, and it just seemed to show that our confidence issue just reared its head again after seemingly being so resolute and so good mentally up at Preston. For us to kind of just collapse against Norwich was really frustrating. But then going into the whole game with some really good team changes, I thought Eza Talahi coming in, O'Shea and Sims as well, for us to freshen it up like that and then put in a really positive performance, some really good goals, really good defending as well, and we controlled the game as well despite Hull having more of the possession. Very encouraging, and hopefully something we can build on going into Brentford.
Now, one of the things I've noticed this week in particular is the shifting, the ever-changing nature of the backline. I want to talk about Andy Yadom. He's the only player to play every league minute. That's 810 of the season so far. The next best is Sam Baldock, back on 685. But it doesn't feel, particularly after the whole game where he scored and set up one, doesn't feel like it's being wasted, and with Thiago Aloy being quite good at right back, there's a nice, it felt quite nice, which we haven't had in a while in terms of the defence. John O'Shea in there too. He's got his cons, he's got his pros though. He's very good and very experienced in terms of stepping out of the defence when he has to, but it just kind of feels like all these three things at the moment are just kind of short-term solutions, and that's good when we're winning at the moment, but are we not going to be winning soon enough? Are they going to get found out?
Yeah, it may be a short-term solution, but as you say, he does seem to do equally well at left back as right back, and if he's got that flexibility, then brilliant. We can use him where we need him. You could call it short-term, because I think John O'Shea has got to be seen as short-term, because he's not really likely to want to play 2 games a week, and after all, he's managed to sort that out by getting himself that he can't play next week. But the whole defence to me seemed to be the bedrock that we got the win from. The Norwich game, if the defence had been a little bit more awake, we wouldn't have had that quick return goal, and just keeping a clean sheet's so important.
And Sim, the John Daddy Bodvarsson scoring form, 5 goals in 5 championship starts now. That's the sort of form you just can't argue with.
Yeah, he's in a proper purple patch at the moment, and it says a lot about his confidence that he's getting into these areas to get some not particularly impressive goals. He's not banging them in from 30 yards or scoring a volley from the edge of the box, but he's getting into those proper areas, finding space in the box and letting other people pick him out. You look at the second goal we scored on Saturday, Yeardon making a really good run into the box, and then Bodvarsson just peels off, finds that bit of space and tucks it home. It's just simple stuff that strikers need to do if they can score regularly, but it's great to have someone doing that in the team, and it's really good for other people in the team as well, that they've got a confident striker that they can pick out and work with, because that's going to be really good for Sam Baldock playing off him, Josh Sims on the other wing as well. So hopefully something he can carry on for a couple of more weeks yet.
Don't you think that the more confidence he has, the more it'll go through the team? I mean, I remember it was the Norwich game, wasn't it, when Matey had that wonderful strike that was brought out, a great save. We need a few more of our players to have a go, and not to think, oh, I haven't got a good sight of goal, I'll pass it to somebody else, and then it just all gets passed around, and that gives the defence more of a chance to get it. It just we do need to be taking a few more pot shots than we seem to have done lately.
Bodvarsson, I noticed a couple of times against Hull, he had a sort of half chance sort of on the 18-yard line, anything not outside the box. He's not fussed about shooting, I can tell you that. And it feels weird that when the lineup got announced for the whole game, I had no idea what sort of formation it was going to be, and Sam Baldock going out to the left. Reading have a weird thing of shoving strikers out wide. I think Kevin Doyle, Lewis Graben ended up in a weird position. We kind of moved Mate Vidra around a little bit.
Gylfi was too.
Exactly, and we force players into square pegs and round holes and all that. Is this because Sam Baldock is kind of struggling as a lone front man, or is it just because he's better than Mo Barrow potentially, or Sonny Aluko?
I think it says a lot about Clement's lack of faith in Mate Aluko, Barrow as well, that he'd rather bring over someone like Baldock to come over to the left wing. And to be fair, he did a good job of it. He didn't just have his attacking side to his game, but he also tracked back really well. He protected Yeardon. It's a very accomplished performance. He didn't look too out of place, to be honest.
That's what I thought. Yes, it may be that just Clement sees more of his total game than we do. We've assumed he's just a striker, but if he shows the defensive side like he did on Saturday, then I can't really argue with putting him on the left wing.
Yeah, I don't think it's something I won't mind as long as it works. But again, it comes back to that sort of short-term solutions. Are we really solving problems, or are we just kind of feeling our way through certain games? And that's sort of what I want to bring on as a sort of the summation of this chat, is that are we now just inconsistent? Before we were pretty consistently poor. Are we now inconsistent, which would be an improvement on that? Is the form, Sim, over the last 3 games enough, if we replicated it over the course of a season, to stay up?
I think it all depends on how we can kind of translate that kind of performance against a better side, because we played well against Preston and Hull, but those are 2 sides that are probably going to be struggling this season and could very well go down. We didn't get it against Norwich. We haven't had it against other of the better teams in the division so far, but with a team like Brentford coming up on Saturday, if we're not on our game, then we could really get knocked for a couple of goals, to be honest. If we can kind of build on that confidence and make it a general part of our play, then sure, we can kick on. But I do just worry if that confidence is tied in too heavily to the lack of quality of the opposition.
I think that's true, but having said that, losing's a habit and winning's a habit. So, Brentford's going to be quite a difficult one to win, but if we can get something out of that, then maybe we can just start the virtuous circle going and get the confidence going, and not just be accepting the losses. We played well, but we still lost, which is what I felt we were getting in the first few games of the season.
Yeah, and that Brentford game really is I mean, it's as tough as they get at the moment. Brentford are 100% from their home league games so far this season. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. Nigel Gibbs came out and did the press conferences and whatnot after the game. I'll quickly run you through that, and then we'll get on to our pub chat for the week. So Nigel Gibbs saying the best thing about Wednesday was the first half. The players were so disappointed and the players wanted to put that right. From the first whistle against Hull, the intent was there, the intensity was there. We got the early goal and that settled us down. And, just imagine if we didn't get the early goal, if the save from the Ezatalahi header wouldn't have fallen to Baldock, would have cleared, could have been a completely different game. And Hull created a couple of chances. They certainly had the ball in the net a few times, even if it was totally illegal all of the time. But, it's one of those wins, I think, that is vital, and probably as well you can hope that in the next few weeks we forget about it and replace it with some more wins, and you go from there. And as sort of Paul mentions there, it's a bit of a spiral upwards rather than downwards, which we've been seeing too much recently. So to move the podcast on into the next section in Pub Chat, we'll be talking about Reading FC women. They have kicked off their campaign, 3 league games in, 4 points from those. So we're going to be talking with Paul about what's going on down at Adams Park.
The view from the Tilehurst end, recapping all this week's action.
Well, so far, the most notable thing seems to be that if the men win, the women lose.
It does feel like that.
They lost against Everton the day after Preston, and I'm afraid they lost yesterday against Birmingham, who scored an early goal. And despite a lot of attacking football from the Reading girls, they couldn't break Birmingham down and lost 1-0, which was a real shame.
Yeah, where is the Reading? Where is the Reading women's team at this stage of the season? Because last year ended so well and they were pushing up with some really big names towards the top end of the league. Didn't get, obviously, sort of over the line in that respect, but didn't really need to. I felt like as a club they'd made enough progress. What is the state of affairs in terms of the aims for the season? Is it just to stay up? Is it to maintain a sort of mid-table comfort and keep progressing and bringing young players through? What are you sort of hoping for out of the season?
They're looking to progress. They want to do better. I mean, they've brought in 3 or 4 new faces. I mean, the most obvious one is Gemma Davison from Chelsea, who was quite a player at Chelsea. So it's we're not just picking up their leftovers. But I think what seems to be the case is that everybody seems to be upping their game as usual. And in fact, I mean, Chelsea, who were the league winners last year, are I think they're below us, aren't they? They've had 3 draws. So there's a lot of competition in the women's game now. That it's definitely going to be a matter of fine margins rather than just Chelsea and Man City and Arsenal just bulldozing their way through the league and everybody else trying to come forth. So it's going to be quite an interesting season, I think.
Yeah, we've started at the moment with Arsenal women at the top with 3 from 3. Birmingham also have 3 from 3. Obviously, They're the team that beat Reading. They've won all their games by a single goal.
Bristol City did as well.
Yeah, because last season there wasn't a relegation spot, was there last season? But this year there is, and it's kind of got Yeovil's name written all over it, as it probably had last year as well.
Yes, Yeovil have got to really change drastically to avoid relegation, I think. I mean, it took them till, 3/4 of the way through the season before they even scored a goal, let alone got a point. Well, no, they did because they got a couple of goalless draws, I think, but they just couldn't seem to score. And, they've got to change that if they're going to have any chance of staying up.
Yeah, with the relegation in this season, what else has changed about the sort of women's game? There's the Conti Cup is kind of being a bit of a pre-season sort of tournament, but it will go into the season. Not the group stage of that isn't over. How is the sort of structure of the season set out at the moment?
Oh, the Conti Cup is quite entertaining, really, because we're in the northern section.
Yeah, we've been playing Durham and Everton and all kinds of teams. Man United, obviously.
Yeah. Well, Bristol City and Reading are both in the northern section, which we were discussing this yesterday, actually, that we don't actually understand why they decided to make 2 sections, north and south, because it would have made so much more sense to let the Chelsea and Man City, who've got European games to give them buys and just have 4 lots of 5 rather than 2 lots of 11, because then I mean, the regionalising of it just shows that women's football's so much stronger in the south, because we're in the northern division. We've played Durham, played Man United so far, and Everton. It really doesn't. It doesn't feel right, and it certainly gives us an awful lot more travelling, and the support as well as the players.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's the sort of setup this season? Is it the style of play and the tactical base? Is that a continuation from last season? Is it a case of sort of evolution rather than revolution, or is there a new sort of style and new sort of formation coming up for the way Reading are playing this season?
No, it looks very much the same as last season. The home games that I've seen, I'm afraid I don't get away to the away games too often, and take a bit of stick for that, but never mind. I carry on doing the home games. They are playing very much the same, and we've lost our the keeper, Mary Earps. She's gone to the continent, but Grace Maloney, who was the keeper before Mary came in, seems to be doing very well. She's back in number 1 position, and the back four are more or less the same as last season, and the midfield, and then we've got Gemma Davison up front, and Sophie Howard on the wing seems to be coming in quite a lot too. But so I don't think it's particularly very different to last season. Kelly will probably have a go at me now for saying that, but
I was going to say about the atmosphere down at Adams Park. How is there? Obviously, we've had a couple of games to sort of get into the new season now. It's sort of early days, and haven't really had a massive team come down yet. So how is the atmosphere at Adams Park? Have you noticed there's a sort of continually growing crowds, and obviously some regular faces noted there as well, a bit of a different atmosphere?
There's the regulars that we see most home games. I don't think it is growing, despite the fact that there are certain games that Reading season ticket holders get in for nothing. In fact, there are a few people that have bought a women's season ticket and really upset about that, because they've got a men's season ticket as well, and now thinking, we've wasted our money. But which it must be a very difficult line to tread. But we do want to get more people along. I think we're going to have another couple of games at the Medeski, which will make a big difference. We definitely get the crowds there. But Adams Park is, well, it's very difficult for public transport, and women's games are always on a Sunday. So, I mean, that makes it doubly difficult to get there if you haven't got a car.
Yeah, that's true. And I suppose one of the sort of big competition still in the women's game, from sort of my perspective, is the FA Cup. And Reading haven't ever really, as far as I'm aware, had a run in that. And do you think that that's probably the next step for Reading, is to really nail down an FA Cup, get into a sort of quarter, maybe a semi-final of that?
It would be great if they could, yes. That's going to be completely a matter of luck as to who we draw, I suspect, to get started. And if we can get going, well, I don't know, because even last year it was the FA Cup that we beat Arsenal, wasn't it? When Farrah Williams did that wonderful goal straight from kickoff that got a lot of publicity.
Yeah.
That was brilliant. So I would like to see an FA Cup run, but I think equally I'd like to see us really getting something in the league, keeping the pressure up like we did last season, and having a go at some of the more established women's teams. Although I don't think Liverpool's doing too well at the moment, but that's partly because Manchester United have nicked half their team.
Yes, and Liverpool have sacked their coach as well, actually, having started quite poorly. So let me bring you into this, and what do you feel as someone who, picked the men's team as their obviously that first team when they were younger and everything, and maybe doesn't have quite the sort of local basis as someone who's not obviously from Reading. Do you think that the women's team is something that you sort of automatically pick up on and go with, or do you find that sort of a lot of fans still generally kind of perceive it as maybe not even part of the same club?
Yeah, I think for some fans it can kind of feel a little bit harder to get into, particularly when you've been following the men's game for so long. But it is great to have women's game finally kind of being promoted a lot more now. Funny that you said about me kind of not being from Reading as much. I'm closer to Adams Park, to be honest.
That's true, actually.
As Paula said, the public transport getting over to Adams Park on a Sunday afternoon is absolutely atrocious. It's on the wrong side of Wickham from the train station. You can't get there, basically, which doesn't help. But if we can get some more games at the Medeski, that will certainly help the attendance level get up. I would have thought.
What we need is to put them in maybe Maidenhead or maybe Reading City. If Reading City can have a big investor come in and build maybe like a 6,000 seater stadium, that would be ideal. Get on that, and then we'll put the women's team in there. Because, I mean, ideally you put them in the Medeski Stadium, but I think it's unrealistic in terms of running costs to a large extent. And obviously even London Irish are there with the pitch and everything. You start treading on people's toes and falling over each other, trying to play two football teams in one stadium. But hopefully, as I say, with the FA Cup and stuff, there'll be moments when putting a game in the Medeski Stadium will be natural.
It's a shame actually, because until a couple of seasons ago they played at Farnborough, and that was a lot better in terms of access, because it was walking distance from the station and close to the M3, although Adams Park's close to the M40. But I'm not quite sure why we moved, but obviously politics somewhere along the line meant we had to move out of Farnborough.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully we'll be covering the women's game as we go along the season, as per usual, on the Tilehurst podcast. And before we move on then, Paul, if I can get a quick word on all things Supporters Trust at Reading, a bit of a star update for us. You're well clued up on what's going on down there and what Star are making of the current situation in terms of the ownership and the sort of moving round with Brian Teverden going and Ron Gourlay seemingly cementing his power base at the club and Star having their fans forum with Paul Clement recently. How's their sort of take on how everything's going at the moment? Yeah,
well, the fans forum went really well. Paul Clement was... he certainly seemed to be very honest, and that was definitely appreciated. And at the end, he actually thanked us for not giving him a hard time. So quite interesting in itself. As far as the structure at the club's concerned, we're currently working hard to get a structured dialogue going with Ron Gourlay, basically, because we don't get to see the owners at all. And we've got a meeting coming up soon to try and get a memorandum of understanding sorted out and agreed, which following clubs like Fulham, they've got that done, sorted, and it means that we then have certain meetings and it defines what we can discuss and things like that, which is going to make quite a difference, I think. The other thing, interestingly, this week we have a meeting with the Academy Director, Ged Roddy,
the man himself, who, to be fair, since he got employed into the role, has really maintained a very low profile.
He has, but he's asked for a meeting, so that's interesting. So we're looking forward to seeing what he's got to say and what he thinks Star can do for the Academy. I mean, in the past, when Brendan Rodgers was Academy Director, we financed the Academy's first trip abroad to a tournament. So that was actually raising the bar for them quite significantly for not an awful lot of money. But the Academy since then has grown in leaps and bounds. I don't think we can afford to be funding things for them, but we've always had a good relationship with the Academy directors, sort of Nick Hammond then, and then Eamon, obviously, and then Lee Heron. So it will be nice to get to meet Jed and get to know him and get the lines of communication open up.
Absolutely, that's what we want to hear is communication between fans and the club, and of course communication between the club and the fans' favourite Reading FC podcast is also never a bad thing. So who knows, maybe we'll continue to work down that sort of that avenue and mind something for our listeners as we move forward through the season, although it's not something you can really hold your breath on, I'm afraid. And on that note, we'll move on then and tackle what the fans are asking us in the mailbag.
Get social with the boys.
Find them on Twitter
at the Tilehurst End
and facebook.com/the Tilehurst End.
So starting us off this week then is Chris Hartley, who was sending a message saying, on Saturday we actually started with purpose and scored early. That's something we haven't done for a while. Do we feel that this is something that Clement will now look to do for future games? I can't see why he wouldn't. Also, it seems to be noticeable that the midfield looked better balanced with Ezra Talahi sitting in front of the back four. Kelly had his best game in a while and Bacuna looked like the Williams replacement we actually bought him for. I think the balance with Ezra Talahi is a good point. Bacuna, I don't know, Sim. I'm still unsold. He had a good game against Hull, yes. Was he tested? Probably not.
No, it wasn't the best opposition to properly test that new midfield out against, but it did give him some confidence. The balance looked good, as Chris points out, and just having someone in there like Ezra Talahi who can come in and break up the play, just do the simple stuff, sit in front of the back four and give you some proper balance to the midfield is really important. We haven't had that in quite a while now. We've had people like Vandenberg, Kelly, Evans tried there over the last couple of seasons, and it's not properly worked out for any of them. They've never really kind of cemented themselves over the long term. So having someone as physically imposing as Ezra Talahi, but also pretty good technically, like him, is very encouraging. And hopefully he can properly build on that, because he did look a little bit off the pace in terms of fitness, which is always going to happen when he's suddenly been rushed over from Russia, and I don't believe he played too much there, so it will take a little bit of time to get him up to speed. But when he is properly firing on all cylinders, he gives us an extra element to that midfield, and it does allow people like Bacuna and Kelly to get forwards, to not really have to worry too much about the defensive side as much as they have done in the past, and hopefully kind of express themselves a little bit more. Kelly looked, he wasn't really good, he wasn't outstanding or anything, but he looked a lot sharper, a lot more confident and a lot more purposeful than he has done in the past. And Bacuna being able to kind of drive forward, making those runs that he likes to make, and he also put in some very good set pieces as well for the first goal in particular, but also a couple of free kicks and corners later on. So it's seemed to have had a good psychological impact on his game.
You know, I thought Liam Kelly was certainly more advanced up the pitch. Certainly for the third goal, I think it is, plays a nice little ball into Sims from about 20 yards out, and that's not really the position we've been seeing him in for much this season. I suspect with Ezra Talahi we'll see him against Brentford. I certainly don't see any reason why we won't, and that links into the sort of very similar questions we've got here from Shane Keane. He said that was the best performance I've seen in a long time from Reading, and we showed that you don't need possession to win. Do you think the squad will go unchanged for Brentford? And on a similar note, Ray Paul messaged us saying, one of the best performances I've seen from Reading in over a year. Have we finally found the right squad to put on the pitch? How will this be taken by the players kept on the bench? Now the bench, I mean, they just can't complain. If you're someone like Sonny Aluko on the bench or Yaku Mete, and you're sitting there thinking, I should be in that team, well, there's pretty much everyone in this squad, bar I can think of maybe some of the injured players and a couple of others, who have had their chance. And I think if you've had your chance, you don't take it, and then you're dropped, and the players who do get put in take it. You know, that's just football. That's life. And Paula, do you expect any changes for Brentford? I can't think of any reason. Obviously, O'Shea isn't going to be there, so
I suspect we'll have a different right back, and Laurie will go back into the central defence. But certainly the bench on Saturday, when you looked at them, you thought, well, you know, not long ago that was half our team, wasn't it? They've all had a good chance. And I must admit, I like Mete. I think Mete is good, and he's very good at getting the ball on his head and redirecting it. It's almost a little bit Jan Kermorgant-like. So I quite liked him on the wing, but maybe Barrow can certainly set a game alight more than he can. So maybe I'd go for Barrow on the left. But no, I can't really see any desperate changes. Just the ones that are enforced for Saturday against Brentford.
Yeah, and I think the thing is with Barrow and Mate, it's like Bill Albanassa, he sent in a message saying that Barrow deserves to start, however, for who? And this is the thing, if Sam Baldock's impressed you on the left, then it's hard. And if Josh Sims, he didn't play a brilliant game on Saturday, but he didn't do enough to be dropped either. And Bilal's saying that Baldock and Sims played amazing, in his opinion. If you switch to a 4-4-2, Bacuna, Kelly and Ezatalahi, who played superbly, in his opinion, one of those has to be dropped. If you have Barrow on the bench, then he thinks we should put Ilori at centre-back and Bacuna at right-back, and then play Barrow instead of O'Shea and kind of go 4-4-2 with that, with Bacuna at right-back. And I mean, it's been done before, Sim. Bacuna's filled in at right back, and the only problem is we're actually got a lot of wing backs, and if you can keep saying to them, if you keep saying to Tyler Blackett, you're not playing despite all the wing back changes around. If you turn around now to Gunter and say, yeah, you're kind of behind Ilori and behind Bacuna as the preferred right back, you'd end up with a lot of surplus players.
Yeah, I wouldn't be moving Bacuna at the moment, to be honest. He does have that. A couple of skills that other players in the midfield don't really quite have. He's got that good mixture of kind of like a physical tenacity and a lot of movement as well that gives him that kind of that dynamism, almost in a Danny Williams-esque kind of way. So you could put him in at fullback, but then you do kind of lose a lot of presence in the midfield, which you are going to need up at Brentford and in other games as well. It does give an opportunity for Chris Gunter to come back in, but I do just wonder if he needs to be kept out of the team for a couple of weeks just to give him a chance to kind of settle down after some performances that probably won't have done his confidence too much good. I hope Blackett can come back in quite soon because he's done well at left back this season. I believe he's injured with a hamstring injury at the moment. But beyond that, it's just frustrating we don't have enough proper left backs at the moment. I know Blackett's got that problem. Omar Richards doesn't seem to be fancied either. So we do really need Jordan Abita back. He's going to give us a lot of balance down that side when he does come back in, and hopefully gives Yiadom a chance to go back to his favoured right side.
Well, the prospect of Obita and Yiadom as the fullbacks is certainly a very decent one to look forward to. And Theo, with our final question of the week, moves ahead to the end of season awards and says, who's been our best player this season? For Theo, it's Ilori, but Yiadom is his close second. I think it's probably got to be Yiadom for me. As I said earlier, the fact he's played every minute of the league season is pretty impressive and pretty important. He's played so much more minutes than his sort of second and third place in that ranking. So, Paula, where do you lay your cards on the best player of the season? Is someone like Liam Moore gonna pop up in there for you?
Not this season. He's been steady, but he hasn't been spectacular. I think I'd go for Yiadom so far. Ilori's been a lot calmer this season than previous seasons, so maybe. But let's give them a few more games and see who else can come up with something. Because Ezatalahi might yet make it if he carries on the way he did on Saturday and gets fitter, because he was just so calm and controlled. He always seemed to have more time to play the ball than our other defensive midfielders have had. So he's definitely got some skills there. I think he could, if he gets a chance, he could even make it into the player of the season.
Sim, John Daddy Bodvarsson deserves to be in with a shout at the moment, doesn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And for a team that's kind of struggling for creativity and finding the net, for him to be our main goal threat at the moment says a lot about the form he's in. I think we've scored about 12 goals at the moment in the league, and 5 of those from Bodvarsson, so he's got to be up there. Yeah,
I think Bodvarsson is certainly in the top 3. I'll probably say top 2 at the moment. I think with Ilori, I find it very hard quite a lot to distinguish. If we've kept a clean sheet, I find it very hard to say, it was because of Ilori and not because of Moore, and vice versa. I know that Moore, certainly in the last couple of years, has tended to be the one favoured, as to say, he was the real man of the match as we did it, kept a clean sheet there. And, I think it's hard. These sort of partnerships, it's not like goal-scoring partnerships where one scores and one doesn't, or gets an assist. It's kind of more nuanced than that, and it's very difficult to tell from the stands, or maybe even on the pitch, who exactly is the most important player there. So that's certainly one to consider. If anyone has any opinions on that, feel free to get involved with the Tilehurst End podcast. The tilehurstend@gmail.com is our email. Send in your thoughts and opinions there, and on Facebook and on Twitter. We're always happy to read them out and discuss them. And even if you want something more in depth, if you want to have a pub chat topic discussed, any thoughts on that, something that you think we've completely missed out, we're always happy to consider it and bring it into the show. So we will round off this week's episode with a quick chat about the Brentford game.
The Tilehurst End podcast.
Read the blog
on thetilehurstend.com.
Saturday, 3 p.m. at Griffin Park. It's a sellout in the away end, at least. 1,600 Reading fans are going to be going on the short train ride to West London, and it's not quite been a happy hunting ground of late, Paula. You know, since 2001, we've won 1, drawn 2, lost 2 there. We've lost 6 of our last 10 versus Brentford overall. It's not too much of a team that we can look forward to and say, yes, they're someone we always beat.
True, yes. You have to go back to 2002 for a really good game at Brentford, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the 2 draws we've had since 2001.
Yeah, that season that we were drawn to success. Yes. I do like Brentford. I like going there, partially because my brother lives in Chiswick, and I go up and we walk in via a very nice hostelry. Makes it a very good game to go to. I must admit, I'm not expecting too much from it. I think if we could get a draw, we'll have done really well. So clean sheet is what I'd really love. So that's probably going to be a goalless draw. Yeah. But I can't really see that happening. I don't think we're going to get anything out of this game, to be honest.
Yeah, only 2 teams have scored more goals than Brentford in the Championship this season. It's a hard one. They've had a slight slip of late. They're 2 draws and 1 draw away from home and 1 defeat. That was against Derby on the weekend, but they've won all their home games. And I don't know, Sid, what do Reading need to do to win this game? Do they need to just continue where they are, or do they need a significant step forward from the whole game and really sort of nail down a bit more defensive solidity, perhaps be a bit more intelligent in attack and use the ball a bit better? And where do the changes need to come to ensure that Brentford are troubled by Reading?
Just carry on from Hull, to be honest. Keep it tight at the back, keep it simple, keep it calm. Having players like Ezatolahi in there, I know we don't have O'Shea for the weekend, but if Laura can come back in and put in a similar performance, just keep it calm, keep it straightforward, and hopefully frustrate Brentford as much as we possibly can. Then we're always going to be in with a chance. We're probably going to need a good amount of luck, but if we can keep it within a goal or 2, then there's always a chance of nicking a goal ourselves, like at the Villa game a couple of weeks ago as well. We didn't expect too much out of Villa Park, but at the end of the day, if you're only 1-0 down going into the end of it and you've got a bit of belief behind you, there's no reason why you can't nick a point or maybe even more.
Well, they do not have Lasse Vibe anymore, who tended to score against the team that he was linked with quite constantly, so we don't have to worry about him. We do kind of have to worry about Neil Maupay, though, who scored 8 in 7 in the Championship. Ooh. And Brentford are properly a settled team. You kind of know exactly how they're going to come out, exactly what players are going to play, which can be to our benefit. We've got a whole week to prepare for this. So let's think of predictions then. Paul, is a 0-0 something you think will happen, or merely something that you want to happen?
I think that's the best I can hope for. I don't honestly think it's going to happen. But having said that, we haven't lost by more than 1 goal, so I don't think it's going to be any worse than that. I think probably we will lose by 1 goal.
Yeah, I think I'm probably going to go 2-1 defeat myself. And in terms of the prediction league, it is slowly chugging away with Dan Wimbush at the top on 10 points. He's had 3 bang-on results so far, so that's why he's at the top. Johnny and Handbags are currently on 8 points. They're the kind of pessimists. They've just predicted defeat, which, as you can tell, is getting them quite high up the league. Sim, you've risen quite recently onto 6 points. You're fourth. Ollie is fifth. Ollie is fifth with 5 points. Myself and Westy back on 3 points, and Tom Crocker on 2. So given you're on quite decent form, mate, I'm expecting you to pick a decent result here for Reading.
I am going to be much more optimistic than I perhaps should be and say that we're going to get a 2-2 draw. Reading are very good at kind of subverting your expectations. If you think they're going to do awfully, then they do sometimes surprise you. I know it doesn't happen too often, but it does happen on occasion, and I fancy us to be able to nick a couple of goals, and we won't get a clean sheet because Brentford are very good going forwards, but I can still see us having a battling performance and getting a 2-2 out of it.
You know, that's not a bad point to make about the sort of switching expectations on their head, because I've predicted, you know, we've drawn 1-2 and lost 5. I've probably predicted that same record this season, but in the wrong games, as it were. When we're winning, I think we're going to lose, and when we're drawing, I think we're going to lose or win. So, you know, such as it is, we've got a week off. I think the week off going into Brentford is good because it's probably going to be quite a high intensity game. We've had quite a high intensity few games on the past week as well, and its emotions have run very much as a roller coaster this week. So it's not a bad thing that we're not involved in the League Cup. So we can look forward to the Brentford game and go from there. So that draws to an end this episode 169 of the Tilehurst podcast. A couple of little technical glitches here and there, but hopefully the end products will turn out okay as we finish here recording. So cheers, Paula and Sim, for turning up on this Monday night.
That's a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
And we will be back next week. Ollie will be here on Thursday to talk properly through the Brentford game and really preview that. Then we'll be back to pick up the pieces next Monday. Let's hope Reading aren't back in the relegation zone by then, because let's face it, we are 2 from 3 at the moment. We've only lost 2 of our last 6. It's not quite promotion form, but let's face it, none of us expected promotion form this season. As long as we're comfortable, we can move on from there, and hopefully this past week, for all its travails, is the first steps to comfort that we truly need, and we can take a few more in the next few weeks. Thank you for joining us on this Tilehurst podcast. We'll see you next time. Come on, you arse.
You smile, funny how the